Hello students and hello everyone. This is Teacher Angel and welcome back to our accounting online class. For today, we will continue our lesson on the financial liabilities and debt restructuring. We already discussed all about the financial liabilities at fair value through profit or loss. And so for today, our lesson would be particularly on the accounting for liabilities that are measured at amortized cost. So what are the financial liabilities that will be measured at amortized cost? So there are three. We have the bonds payable, we have the notes payable, and the loans payable. How do we differ the three types of payable? So we have here, first is on the bonds payable. So a bonds payable is a liability that arises because of the bond transaction. And what is this bond? It is a formal, unconditional promise made under seal to pay a specified sum of money at a determinable future date to make periodic interest payment at a stated rate until the principal sum is paid. So in this transaction, we have the bond issuer, we have the bondholder, and the underwriter or the arranger. So the bond issuer here is the borrower or the debtor. Mao na siya ang nangutang in the transaction. So the one who borrows will be the one to issue the bonds. So siya may nag-issue, siya na maligya sa bonds. Not really in a sense nga kanang baligya gyud siya kay ang ending man ani kay nakautang man ta. Pero 'di ba when we issue the bonds, we received a consideration. But the transaction there is a borrowing transaction. So we receive the money kay ang issue po nga term kay magamit man sad na siya sa pagbaligya sa shares. So pag maingon tag mag-issue ta og shares, so namaligya tag shares. So kung bonds pod ni siya, so nag-release ta og bonds, nag-issue ta og bonds for a consideration. But the transaction technically is a borrowing transaction. So when we issue the bonds, so ni-borrow ta, and then we receive a consideration wherein makadawa ta og money, and then we credit the liability. So specifically bonds payable. Then we have the bondholder. So the bondholder is the one who will hold the bonds. Siya may investor in a transaction because on the side of the bondholder, ang iyahang i-record is investment in bonds. So, I repeat. So, on the side of the issuer, so katong nag-issue sa bonds, so mag-debit siya o cash for the consideration and mag-credit o bonds payable. So, on the side of the bondholder, okay, so bondholder, so ang iyahang entry here would be investment in bonds. Okay, so he or she is an investor and then mag-credit siya og cash. So, ang cash nga ibayad ni bondholder, so ma-receive na siya ni issuer. So, si issuer, again, is the borrower, and the bondholder here in form that is an investor. Okay, ang iyahang mang i-debit kay investment in bonds. Pero in substance ani, ang iyahang role gyud sa transaction is a lender. Kay magpahula man siya og money. Wherein later on, bayaran sa issuer at a specified sum of money at a determinable future date plus interest payments at a stated rate. Then we have the underwriter. So naatay middleman. So naatay intermediary between the issuer and the bondholder. And this underwriter or arranger arranges the transaction for a fee. So, naa siya madawat nga bayad. So, he will be the one to arrange this transaction. And this is a middleman for a fee from the borrower or gain in reselling the instruments. Pwede man sad siya nga siya ang mupalit sa mga bonds or siya may mahimong bondholder ani temporarily pero iya hasad ibaligya to interested nga bondholders. So bonds are financial instruments since they represent contractual obligation to pay cash or other financial assets. So when do we recognize a bonds payable? So we recognize a bonds payable when the entity becomes a party to the contract or when transfer of resources transpired. And we present the bonds payable in the liability section of the statement of financial position and shall be classified as either current or non-current depending on the expected settlement date. By default, since bonds payable entails a huge amount of money, so the terms are usually for a longer period. But if there are portions of the bonds that will mature in the next 12 months after the reporting date, like for example, next year na ay mo mature kung installment payments ang principal. So therefore, katong portion nga mo mature within 12 months, mao to siya ang current liability. So it is not at all times nga non-current na siya. Kung ang iyang expiry or maturity date niya is in the next pang mga years to come, so longer nga time, unya dili siya installment, dili siya serial bonds, then therefore mahimo siyang non-current tanan. Pero pag naay mo mature in regular intervals, so there would be amounts that will mature in the next 12 months, so those amounts will be classified as current. Okay? So that's for the bonds payable. We also have the notes payable. So let's proceed to the notes payable as introduction. Okay. So what is a notes payable? So it is a promissory note that is a financial instrument wherein one party called the maker or the issuer promises in writing to pay a sum of certain money to the other party called the payee, either on demand of the latter or at a fixed determinable future time. So if the accounts payable or the promise to pay has a corresponding promissory note as evidence of the promise to pay, then that promise to pay is recorded as a notes payable. So there are two parties here. We have the maker. So the maker here is the issuer. And this issuer is the borrower, same as the bonds payable. So ang issuer ani ang borrower. And the other party here is called as the payee. Siya ang maka-receive sa payment from the maker or the issuer by the time nga mobayad na siya sa utang. So parehas sila sa bonds payable because there is a promise to pay and there's a certain amount of money that should be paid. And if the agreement entails interest, then bayaran ang interest. But if not, so pwede ra nga katulad yung principal ang bayaran. So when do we recognize a notes payable? So we recognize a notes payable when the entity becomes a party to the contract or when transfer of resources transpired. So we present the notes payable in the liability section of the statement of financial position and classified as to either current or non-current depending on the expected settlement date. So it's the same with the bonds payable. So kung na ay amount na mature within the next 12 months, then that would be classified as current. In addition, you have to present the notes payable at net carrying value. So the net carrying value is to be reported on the face of the SFP as part of the liability section and shall be computed as follows. We have the face amount deducted by the discount on notes payable, and you will get the net carrying value. So that is for the notes payable. Now, what is a loans payable? So the loans payable is a financial liability as well, which is other than the short-term trade payables on normal credit terms. It is similar to the notes payable, except that this borrowing is normally obtained from financial or lending institution. So, ang iyahag yung characteristic is nangutang yun ta og money para bayaran og money. Because ang notes payable manggod ug ang accounts payable, pwede na siya nimong ma-incur nga dili kwarta ang imuhang gi-acquire as consideration. For example, sa accounts payable, pwede na siya nga ma-incur nimo nga nangutang ka og goods or services, di ba? Nangutang ka og service from a particular nga company, so inutang nimo, so accounts payable na siya. Notes payable, pwede na siyang money ang imuhang nadawat or pwede po goods or services. Kalahian lang niya sa accounts payable is that the notes payable is evidenced by a promissory note while the accounts payable, wala. But in the loans payable, the object gyud sa transaction is money. Money imuhang giborrow, money po imuhang ibayad. That's why it's normally obtained from financial or lending institution. When do we recognize a loan payable? When the entity becomes a party to the contract or when the transfer of resources transpired, that's when the time we recognize a loan payable. We present the loan payable in the liabilities section of the statement of financial position and classified as either current or non-current depending on the expected settlement date. So, kung kano siya bayaran o niya na ay amount nga dapat bayaran within the next 12 months. So, kung currently due, then current liabilities. If dili pa siya currently due, then non-current liabilities. So, those are the brief descriptions of the three financial liabilities that are classified as financial liabilities measured at amortized cost.
If you like this video, don't forget to click like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to be updated with the latest video lessons. Thank you for watching.